This is Common Services Showcase Team Sprint Review called One Last Autograph. And I'm Chris Evans. I'm the Scrum Master for the team, but we're moving into a transition. I'll let Matt talk about that in a little bit. Just want to let you know that we are recording the session and they will be available up on the BC Dev Exchange for anyone that wants to see them. We're also keeping copies on this Microsoft stream. So if you want to forward this along to anyone that missed it, you can do that right there. Today we're going to go, this is a big transition day for our product owner, Matthew. He's moving on to another team. So we thought it would be a good time to review all the work that he's accomplished and go through what's going to happen next. I'll be taking over as product owner while he's gone. He's got huge shoes to fill, and I'm really going to just do my best to live up to that and wish him best in his new role. And after that, I'm going to go through a quick preview of our Chef's release, which is the Common Hosted Forms service. And we have a one use case of a form that we've got live, or that will go live this week. So with that, Matthew, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. So when we started this project about 19 months ago or so, we came into it with very much a lot of uncertainty around where it would take us. We had a mandate that was given to us that centered around making onboarding to existing common services easier. Over the years, there's been many people that have built reusable components that are in the attempt to make it easier for people to not have to rebuild the same set of capabilities over and over again. And in the natural resource ministries, we went through that period of time where we built many of these common services that we now wanted to take advantage of. And so my team started out working on figuring out how to onboard to those quickly. Around the same time, as you may know, all of the DevOps practices have started to become very mainstream in the development communities and government, and we're starting to see some of the large benefits of adopting those practices. And so some of the things that we've learned about the existing natural resource ministry common services is that we needed to move them forward and modernize the DevOps platforms that they're residing on. And so our first few projects that we worked on were to take those and re-platform them so that they could take advantage of the DevOps tools that are now in practice. And so let's go into what those tools are that we built. First one was our email service, and what we found with this tool is that it was very simple. You know, we had a government SMTP server that was doing its job. Nobody that thing's solid and very much a commodity. But what was something that needed to be built each time somebody wanted their app to send emails was that layer between the application and the SMTP server. And so the common hosted email service is the answer to that question. It's an API. It requires a service client and a password to use it. But beyond that, that's all that was needed. And so if we go back a slide to the vision diagram, whenever we went to build whenever we go about building a common service or a common component, the one thing that we really wanted to make sure we do for each of these was to make sure that onboarding is easy. We knew that in order for our team to be successful, that we needed to be able to scale and continue to build additional common services without getting busier and busier and then not being able to do anything else. And so these pillars of having onboarding be a self-service experience, having a demonstrated place where people can try out a common component, that's like a showcase application or some other usable example. And then as well, some implemented example code that shows people how to actually put your common component into their application. So how to connect to our API, for example. The other piece that you see on the top is how you plan to deliver those common components. This is always a question that needs to be asked anytime you build a common service. You have to ask, are you going to host it yourself? And then allow people to hit that common service where you've hosted it. Or are you going to package it up so that they can run it and self-host it themselves? Or there's another option where you may just package up a piece of code that they could include in their packages when they build their code. And then lastly, you might just have a set of tested instructions that after instructions results in them having a running piece of code. So all four of those are great examples of how you could deliver a common service. But depending on which path you go down, you'll have to construct your common service slightly differently. One example is if you do a hosted service, you have to be concerned about database backup and high availability and those other things. If you provide a reusable component, however, that allows for teams to do self-hosting, then they can control how they want to handle things like database backups and high availability on their own. And maybe let's just flip back to that car slide now. So this is a slide I got from the team that's working on the new digital framework for government. It overviews an example of how you might see the Chevy Camaro car as a product built by Chevy, but really it's not. It's a service, a set of services that have been brought together, a set of components that have been brought together to deliver a set of capabilities. But each of those parts that you see around the car were all built by different people. So here in the lab and across government, we're seeing teams now starting to contribute these components, and we're all going to be able to take advantage of those. My team's only built a few. We have an email service. We have a document generation service, which I'll talk about now. But we rely on many of the other teams in and around our community to deliver on the things that we've built over the past year as well. So let's flip forward now. I'll go over the document generation service. Maybe I'll just touch on this one more thing on the email service before I move on. One of the things that we wanted to make sure we do is to check that our products are actually adding value and figure out kind of what our return on investment looks like. So we know how much we've spent to build the common hosted email service, and we've been tracking the emails that have been sending through the service. In the beginning of the project, one of the things we did was to take a baseline of how long it took for someone to send an email manually and put a cost to that. It wasn't a large cost. It was $5.80 on average to have somebody sit down and craft a manual email that would include some basic information from your system and then fire that off. So based on all of the information that we've collected, we've calculated that our break-even point for where the cost of running this service will be cheaper than if everyone had just been doing them manually is after we send 39,687 emails. So we're currently sitting at 32,000, and our 1 year mark for this product going live is the middle of November. So we're expecting that at about the year mark, we'll hit our break-even point. So that'll be really great to see, and then beyond that, it's a matter of managing our day-to-day operating costs versus the value that's being provided. All right, so let's maybe stop there. Any questions before I go on to the document generation service? Anything in the chat? Nope. Okay. All right, so after we built the common hosted email service, the next item of priority was doing document generating. So this is where you take a template and some data, you merge those things, and you output something that can be printed, like a Word document or a PDF file. Again, this is something that teams do very often. Many times you'll see this capability come up when people are building software. And so again, we first deployed a hosted API to provide this service. But after doing that and having a limited number of people on board to that, we had another team that wanted to self-host the product. And so we took a look at our architecture for this product and then redeployed it with a set of subcomponents that made it possible for the other team to host it themselves and just run the part of the code that they needed and not anything else. And so I had a question in the chat here. Are the email templates being managed by Chess? The email templates themselves are passed in each time you make a call to this API. And so in the case of the hosted service or the self-hosted service, the team that implements this API will need to manage their own templates. Template management itself is a future idea for a common service, but it requires another service to actually host the documents in order for that to be done. But at this time, it's not a capability that we provide. Now, this document generation service itself has not had the amount of usage that our email service has had. And so this is an example where you don't really know how popular a service is going to be and what that return on investment is going to look like until after you give it a shot. So going forward, we need to be careful about how much we invest in document generation, and take a look at maybe what capabilities we're missing, or what enhancements we need to make to this product for it to be to have more uptake, so that return on investment can be achieved. And then there's an additional answer in the chat here about the templates. So Lucas says templates are passed in at the time the API request is made, along with the sets of data to populate. So there's no central storage of templates on the Chess side at this time. I guess I answered that question in regards to document generation, but in terms of our common hosted email service, that tool also accepts an email template as well. So there is a bit of document generation in a sense that happens on the email service as well. Although it's not a Word doc that gets generated, it would be an email, a formatted email that would be generated using a form of HTML templates. Okay, so I think let's move on to the next slide. We have our slide controller there. Okay,
Did
sorry,
that
my
update? Yeah,
screen.
it's just a bit of a lag there.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so after we spent that time building those two first common services, is right around the time that we all experienced the introduction of our new friend, COVID. And we were asked to assist in a particularly need for the tree planting industry in silviculture. So there were, they had pulled out their stock of trees. There were millions of seedlings. They were thawing, getting ready to be planted, and then the pandemic hit, and they were told, well, we can't go out into the field until we figure out how to keep workers safe. And so they worked to get these protocols built, the health and safety plans in place. And we needed a way to have our inspectors confirm that, in fact, these operations they did have their protocols in place. And our team was asked to build this forms service that would allow the operators of each of those industrial camps to report back that they had implemented their protocol and they were ready for an inspection to take place. So we implemented that for the silviculture industry, and they proceeded to get going again with their tree planting efforts. And that went very well. We reported back that there were no COVID cases, and they actually had a very healthy year, and they're going to continue to do that level of screening in future years. The product worked very well, and some of the other industries reached out to us to ask for the same thing, and so we were able to help with the Ministry of Energy and Mines for the regional mines who need to have these protocols implemented as well. And then with the domestic workers for farming and seafood operations, they also asked for a form to be implemented. Following the implementation of the mines and the agriculture forms, the rest of the forestry ministry wanted to get their other 11 program areas up and running. That includes things like wildfire camps, pine cone inventories. I'm not sure of the list exactly off the top of my head, but all in total, we have about 15 different program areas that are using these three forms to report out the completion of protocols for these industries. This effort that we went about doing for this Common Forms toolkit, it seemed like a bit of a sidetrack to what our team was working on, but we've been able to take advantage of this work and put together a Vue scaffold, which is essentially a quick start application that you can use to get going with a Vue app. One of the great stories about this app is that we were able to implement these forms in a very short time frame. The first form took us only 4 days, and with, of course, some overtime in those 4 days. But we pulled together and were able to do this quickly because we were able to use all the other common services that we had built over the previous year. So we used our DevOps tools to do quick deployments. We used our email service for all the notifications. We used document generation to do the PDF receipts of a submission. And we had some Vue Scaffold framework that we had started to work on that we pulled together as well to give us a public and a private screen with log in to Keycloak. So a lot of the work, we totaled it up, about $380,000 worth of software that we implemented in that 4-day period. We spent about $42,000 on onboarding each of these forms altogether, but we're able to put in all that extra value because of the common services that were leveraged. So there's a question here from Robert Rabb. Has a data store been implemented to persist form data? Jason answered there, yes, all the submitted form data is persisted. So in the back end of the Common Forms toolkit, we are running a Postgres relational database. Each form has its own set of database tables. The way that this application is architected isn't necessarily the best design for scaling it out to a large number of forms. And so we are looking at other ways of implementing this quick development of forms, and we're going to talk about that after in our overview of the common hosted form service. Any other questions on the Common Forms toolkit or our COVID response? And a question here, can the forms be accessed as anonymous users, i.e. the public, or does it require authentication? So these forms are all anonymous submissions. So the person who submits it will tell us who the operator is for the industrial camp. But we don't do any authentication on the form submission. There is a secure page that does require login that lets you see all the form submissions for the form that you are the administrator of. That's what happens when you click on the admin button on the screen that you're seeing here. And in that secure area, you're also able to access a dashboard that lets you view the database and generate reports and charts and things using a metabase service, which is another one of our common components that we put together. Okay, so I think that's all the questions from the chat. One of the other products that we actually built first was a product called GetOK. It is a tool that lets you quickly get a token for accessing an API. And so before this existed, we had to onboard to an existing API to implement our email service, our first release of our email service. We timed it, and it took us 2.5 days in duration, and we had 4 experts that knew how the API was built. They knew how the tokens needed to be exchanged and all that. So 4 experts working for 2.5 days, and we were set up. We thought we could do better. We were able to build this application that turned it into a few steps. We got it down to 35 minutes. Then we got it down to 10 minutes. And then in the most recent release, it's down to just a 5-minute step. First step, they ask for access to the GetOK application that gives them the ability to manage their application. And then they go through these steps here, 1, 2, and 3, to deploy a service client to each of the environments that they will use in their application. They provide us some basic information about their application. And then we give them back a service client, a securely transmitted password, as well as a number of links to information about how to use the API and some sample API calls in a Postman collection that they can use to get started very quickly. So that application, I think, is a good starting point to look at how in government we can do fast API registration, and we've been starting to talk a bit more with the group in DataBC who's in charge of API registries about how we might contribute or collaborate with them on a future iteration of something like this product. Okay, let's move on if there's no questions. Another piece that we put together is monitoring. Of course, when you have a production service in place, you need to make sure that it's running. Our email service has really become very popular now. We have 13 applications running in production, and hundreds and hundreds of emails going out every day, and they're relying on the service to be up and running. And so we implemented some third-party tools that are running off of the OpenShift cluster, so that if the whole cluster goes down, we still are notified of this outage. And we have it configured to send notifications of errors as well as uptime using a logging stack. So we have a Fluent Bit sidecar running. The developers can correct me if I got that wrong, but I think that's what it is. That leverages some Elastic stack and writes back to our Discord server the error messages that occur on any of the common service that we run. So that's an important piece. Of course, there are lots of other people that are working on logging. This is something that's working for us at this time, but we are looking forward to collaborating with other people on a more common notification and error handling logging tool that would eliminate the need for this. Okay, let's move to the next. One of the things that we have done as well in our tracking of our products is to make sure that we are understanding their value and return on investment. And so we track the costs of each of our products and are always displaying those on our internal dashboards. So we know the initial startup development costs and the ongoing continuous improvement costs for each of those. We also track costs over categories. So our total team cost per month based on our salaries and our invoices is distributed amongst these 4 sections for overhead, user onboarding, continuous improvement, and development costs. And lastly, we've got it all broken up again as well for strictly on each product that we've built to see, at a glance, which product is we spend our most time on. And it's interesting to see as we start working on a new product, how it catches up to some of the other products, and sometimes it surpasses them, sometimes it doesn't. Our latest product, Common Hosted Form Service, Chefs, has surpassed almost all the other products as well, except for our Get OK product. Okay, next slide.
I think that's about it.
Okay.
Did you want to tell everyone where you're heading?
Yeah, my new team is working in the Energy and Mines and Petroleum Resources Ministry. We are going to be working with the Digital Trust Services team to tackle one of the big problems about responsible sourcing of minerals. And that deals with understanding from like a company like Microsoft, who might be building lots of technology, hardware pieces, where they got the minerals from that go into the products that they're building. And so in BC, we've got a list of mines, and so we're going to be using the blockchain and Hyperledger technologies and the org book, digital wallets, to find a way to help move that responsible sourcing initiative forward. So I've got a lot to learn in that space. This has been great working on the Common Services team. I think it's been my favorite position in government so far, and great people to work with. Most of all, I've been most excited about how the community is starting to work together, particularly on the common services that we've built. We can see now that you'll see some of the people that are using our tool talking to each other about our tool, and that's really a rewarding thing when that happens. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks, Matt. Yeah, and congratulations. And the team will try and keep this snowball picking up speed and, and gaining snow as we move forward.
Exactly.
That's some congratulations for you in the chat there. I'll be going over. Is there any more questions for Matt? Well, if you have one, just pop it in the chat, and we can always come back to it. So I'll go over what we're working on next or currently, which is this Chef's application. We've tried really hard this sprint to get out a release one. It's not quite MVP ready or ready for the general public, but we did a smaller, I guess what's called a canary or alpha release to a small set of users. We had our main use case was to build a tracking form for contact tracing. So as a proof of concept, we went through the workflow, built the form, and that's what I'll be showing today. So the first step we have is if someone were to go into the office. I'm just going to take the presentation away here. If someone were to go into the office, they might see a poster or something printed on the desk or in each area where you'd need to fill in the information, and you'd see a QR code, or there would be a link on the intranet. So most people have smartphones that can access the QR code and go to a link these days. If they scan that, they would go to a website or common hosted forms application, which would show the contact tracing form. We've made it quite simple, just talking to the business area that requested it. Just 4 fields. So on the phone or on the website, you could go in to pick your workspace type. I usually work in the drop-ins and type in your desk number. Hit submit, and that's done. So it doesn't take too long for people to come in the office and quickly sign into a form there. Any questions about that so far? And then I'll move on to the back end, how to build that form.
So the user's responsible for tracking that ID?
The sense was that the desk number would be printed, or there would be stickies or something on each desk or in each area that you'd go into the office.
Oh no, I mean please keep the following confirmation ID for your records.
Oh, this information. Yeah, it's all up for debate. That's how we've been implemented now, but we've given an ID where the person could keep that information.
Okay.
But this is very early on, so if there's any suggestions about that kind of thing, please let us know.
That confirmation ID is one of the standard values that's included with every single form submission, and it's stored in the database of the application as well. So they don't have to track it, but if they wanted to keep a copy, it's just like their receipt. saying, if they say, you didn't sign in today, yes, I did. Here's my tracking number.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Most people throw away those receipts, though, don't they? And this is the admin side. So that's just the form. That's all anyone would really see if they went to the application for a particular form, either contact tracing or otherwise, if people wanted to build other forms, eventually public facing. Right now it's only open to IDER, but we could do any type of form and link to it from any website. This is the admin interface. So we're still working on the about page and some of the interface elements. There's some information on how to use it. At the bottom, we have a disclaimer and statement of responsibility for form designers, just making sure people do their due diligence, fill out privacy impact assessments, meet all the requirements there. This is a list of forms that I can access. So right now, all forms are open to all IDER accounts. So anyone that went to this page would see all of the forms. I made the contact tracing check-in form. So I have manage view submissions abilities, as well as the launch, which launches the form we just saw. I can view submissions. So here's the list of submissions that we have. I can view individual submissions as the contact tracing person. I can also, if I want to analyze data, I can export to a spreadsheet. For instance, if we found that there was an incident with COVID from a particular date range, we wanted to track down the seat numbers, I could type in the dates, or I could download all of the data. We don't have any fancy dashboards at the moment. We download to CSV right now, which gives you a file that looks like that. And if I parse the data, I can look through and see who was at any particular seat. I was just looking at, there's a comment here from Lucas that please keep language was just a boilerplate part. Oh yeah, there's a bit of boilerplate and generic form submission text, so we can adjust wording. And the other thing I can do is edit a form. If I need to change form, I can go in and manage it. Or create a new form. Create a new form right now is hidden. We're still ironing out some kinks and a few bugs in the admin section. So that's why we've held it back from a full release to everybody. We're still working through that, but we did want to get up as quickly as possible proof of concept so people could give it a try. So we did the contact tracing form, and people can get in there and play around with it. Any questions on that? Or did I miss anything from the developers? No, okay. Well, if anyone wants more details on chefs or, oh, there's a question here from Bethany. When do you think this will be ready for all Gov to use? What do you think, Matt? We've have a decent backlog now, or any of the developers can pitch in. I was looking at what's on the backlog. We do have to finish the admin features, but I would say weeks or a couple months.
Yeah, we had a list of things that we wanted to get done before we opened it up to everybody. So some of those things included being able to generate a PDF of your submission, or some type of deleting of things that you didn't want if you were, fooling around with something by mistake, you wanted to delete a form. So those last kind of sets of capabilities that are outstanding. There's not a long list though.
No, there's really not. Yeah.
I think one of the key ones is the ability to set your form as published or unpublished, and some of the versioning features that are needed. Because right now, when you create your form and save it, it's automatically published, and so we wanted to change that to a two-step process, so you can save your form, and then in a separate step, you can decide to make it published or not. So a few of those features I think are important to have before it goes out the door.
And Roland's asking, earlier this year, you were looking at packages for form creation management. Any news on that? Is that the form IO, Roland?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they wanted to see the actual form builder. Can we show that?
Yeah, we can show the form builder, sure. So I'm just bounced over to our dev site where we have the admin features enabled. So I can create a form here. There's a couple of things we're still working on. If I want to create a new form, I can name it. Right now, public is grayed out, but eventually we will be opening that up so public can get into the form and fill it out. I'll make this available to IDER, although we're looking at PCEID down the road, PC services card, or any other kind of authentication that we want to add. I can also choose specific team members, which if I choose that, then I can add specific people that can review or submit or manage the form. This is the form design. I can choose from two different modes, simple, which has some pre-configured components that I can drag and drop. It's a little bit friendlier, but if I'm more of a developer type or I want to do something a little more advanced, I can switch the mode. I won't go through a lot of that today, but it will give you fields that are more advanced with more options, but they're harder to use. To build the COVID form, I can drag on components. We had a
building.
That was a select view list.
Yeah.
Building. And I'll make that required. We had a number, floor number, I think.
Yep, floor number.
You'll notice here we've tried to follow the guide for form design from the government forms group, and instead of required, they'll show optionals for fields that are not required. So if I put required, then that disappears. What else do we have on there? Workspace type.
Maybe you could add a couple of data.
In here, it's quite easy to put in. Yep, some data. And the desk number. and I'll make that required as well. You can edit. There's some edit buttons on the right here if you make a mistake. So this I made a number, but maybe I'll validate it. And I know I'm only on floor 2 maybe, so I'll put a minimum value of 2. I can put 3, but I don't think I can put 1.
Validation just runs when you're previewing the form.
Yeah, not in the game. After I've finished that, I can export the design and keep it on my desktop. Maybe I want to make a template out of it, or I'm not quite done and I want to save it or upload it from a different environment, or I want to give it to someone from a different ministry that doesn't have access to this form. Otherwise, I can save it. Goes back to the manage form page where I now have edit buttons. So if I wanted to change it from IDER to public or change the title, I can do that here. And if I made a mistake on my form or there's a new requirement for a new field, I can edit the form, and maybe we want to capture, okay, the date and time that someone was at a particular desk. The QR code comes up here, so I can generate a code to share. Team management, if I want to add particular users, I can make them one of 5 roles: the owner of the form, team manager, which can update this page, form designer, which can do the designing I was just showing, a reviewer, which can review all of the submissions, and a submitter who can look at the form and fill it out. We'll have a delete or a soft delete function available soon. It's not, doesn't quite work, I don't think yet.
Soft delete's just where you're marking it as deleted in a database field, and then we can just filter the lists here to hide things that are marked as deleted.
We can also launch forms from here and view submissions again, which I showed earlier. I'm just going to look at the questions here. Yeah, just a comment for Roland on the code there. Thanks, Chris. Nice and simple. Even for my all. Need to collaborate on shared form components. Yeah, absolutely. So we do have the ability to make some custom form components. Just show that again.
You could edit your other one if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, which I lost which one it was.
There's anyone.
Oh, here it is. So one custom component we made was a business search name, which links into the verified name network. I'll save that. So here I can I think Matthew has a business named after him.
Not my business.
Yeah. So that's searching all valid BC business names. So we have the ability to add, I think, a couple others. I can't remember. One was something on gender with specific a select list that's pre-made for us, or a radio list, that kind of thing. We're also talking about where the form goes. So there's submission data, and where it's sent, we can customize. So it can be sent to an external API, for example, for processing. So not only the downloaded CSV where we can parse it, but it can be sent to any API, and we'll be looking at that down the line to see if we can do anything a little more exciting or fancy with the data. So thanks for that, Lucas.
And if there are ministries that are interested in this, but for legal reasons or policy reasons aren't permitted for the form submissions to be stored in the same physical or virtual server that the rest of the submissions are stored within, this is open source code on the GitHub projects that could be, you could run it and host it in your own project, and then we collaborate on feature changes with you.
Right. So just go get it and host it yourself, and all the data's yours. Also, if people wanted to collaborate on this, they can pull a request against our open repository and help improve the product. I have another one for sentiment analysis. So yeah, those are great examples of some common components that we could put into the system. Got about 5 more minutes. Did anyone else have any more questions or comments, or want to see anything else in the application? I think it's pretty exciting, this one. It's quite fun to work on. It's definitely a very interesting product. And two, if you want, oh, one more question, versioning. Is that for, Chris, is that for versioning of the submissions or the form design?
Yeah, I guess it's just for the versioning of forms. It's something that we're also working on, but it will come up. You know, people have a different version of the form.
We do have, we're going to be implementing a published unpublished system. We do have some versioning built in or baked in at the moment. So every time there's a change, every time I hit that save icon, it'll create a new version of the form. And when I download the data, it matches the data to whatever form I used. It also just displays on the form. So here I've edited this contact tracing form twice, so I'm on version 2. I added in, I made a quick change to something. So that version will just go up, but we're also working on a published, unpublished system, and that will all be available on the manage page.
We've also thought about the ability for people to save a submission before they've, like, I'm imagining people are going to start creating pretty complicated forms, right? They're going to take a little while to fill them out, and so they'll want to save it, finish later, and maybe even in the future the ability to have them come back and edit it after it's been submitted. But those are still just kind of future ideas. We'll see where that takes us as we start seeing people use it.
Yeah, there's an endless list of ideas out there. I think there's another one on externalizing themes. So that's one thing that I guess we've had to look at too, is to come up with some theme templates. I'm not sure if that's the same thing. But just making some templates that someone could go in for a fairly standard form with a bit of logic in it, and easily start from there and customize it.
Is that what you meant by a theme?
Yeah, like say for example, the semantic UI library, the way it behaves for the components, it's a little bit different from the way it works on the material and bootstrap. So I'm just looking for, approach where we can externalize the themes along with the library, what you can pick it up.
Oh yeah, like visual display style.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just the bootstrap that Form.io uses right now.
Yes.
Although it's in a Vue app that's running Vuetify, which has presented some of its own challenges. But yeah, being able to like toggle between the like different design languages would be really cool. I think the Form.io designer builds all its DOM with bootstrap classes and stuff, though. Although we haven't dug too much into that. But yeah, I guess the short of it for now is no, it's just the bootstrap style for now.
Okay. So we were using Semantic UI, Semantic CSS, and the usability approach. So we are trying to build a forms using the semantic, the same usability and the styles. So I was just thinking whether we have one on this. Okay.
Great, thanks. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? I think some people...
when we say version, when I saw the version 1.0, 2.0, like the version. So when we say the version, is it the version of the template, the form template, or the user interaction, like, the edits made by the user? So,
that is the version of the form design. Okay. So, for example, if I've downloaded the information in that contact tracing form that we've been using, it shows the version that people have been using. So this is all version 1, and this is the data from version 1. Then it's version 2, and then maybe there's an extra field, so that shows up in the data as well, in the submission data.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you. I got it. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
We're also looking at the need for a reference number for your form. That'll be like the version that the form designer will actually want to advertise to people. Like how we know a T4 by the name T4. So that's
a lot of those finance forms that people just know by the short name or the reference number rather than the actual name of the form. Right. If you do want more information, please feel free to contact us. There's our email. We're on the Rocket chat. You can get a hold of me directly. And again, you can watch the video if you happen to miss this one. I think we'll be opening the site up, the test site up for people to play around on a little bit. If you did want access, please contact me directly. And if there's no more questions, I think we'll wrap this one up. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Matthew, good luck on your next adventure.
Woohoo!
Thanks a lot. See you guys.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, see you.